Major developments in the Middle East. President Trump announcing that the U.S. has conducted a major strike on Iran's Kharg Island. Writing on Truth Social, quote, the United States Central Command executed one of the most powerful bombing raids in the history of the Middle East and totally obliterated every military target in Iran's crown jewel, Kharg Island. I've chosen not to wipe out the oil infrastructure on the island. However, should Iran or anyone else do anything to interfere with the free and safe passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, I will immediately reconsider this decision.
Kharg Island is a small landmass in the northern Persian Gulf. It's about 16 miles off the coast of Iran. It is the country's main oil export terminal. It controls about 90% of the nation's crude oil exports. Now, the war had not impacted the island until these strikes. President Trump reacted to the recent military operations in Iran. Listen.
The situation in Iran is going very well. A lot of big hits today, a lot of big wins today, as you probably have heard militarily. And I think it's going very well and for very good control. Today we've had some very, very big hits, very powerful hits.
More American firepower is on the way. The amphibious assault ship USS Tripoli, along with thousands of Marines, have been deployed to the Middle East. More warships and fighter jets are also being sent. So obviously, Kharg Island has been that crown jewel of Iranian oil production for decades, and politicians have always been very wary about engaging Kharg Island because obviously it's very important to Iran. But if something happens to it, you wind up not only hurting Iran, but the whole rest of the world if you wipe that oil production off the map.
Which is why the president said that they did strikes, but only on military installations or military targets, not on anything to do with the oil, at least thus far.
Well, that's right. And I think what is really interesting is that, as you point out, Charlie, so whether it was Joe Biden or Barack Obama or even George W. Bush or George H.W. Bush, Kharg Island has never been a target because of the oil infrastructure importance that it poses. However, when you've had so many Democrats and critics of President Trump say that he doesn't know what he's doing, doesn't have a historical geopolitical sense of things, we flash back to 1988, long before he was in politics, and he understood that. Watch this. Oh, it's quote, sorry. He said, I'd be harsh on Iran. They've been beating us psychologically, making us look like a bunch of fools. One bullet shot at one of our men or our ships, and I'd do a number on Kharg Island. I'd go in and take it. This is at a time when he's hosting The Apprentice, right? He's not in politics, but yet he understood the importance of Kharg Island and why that's a big development.
And yesterday he was talking on the radio with Brian Kilmeade, and Brian asked him, so are you going to go after Kharg Island? And he says, well, that's not on our list of targets, but I could change my mind in a second. And by the way, you shouldn't even be asking me that question.
Yeah, he said, why would I tell you this?
That's hours later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He clearly knew that that was on his mind, and it was really smart of Brian to ask that question. A lot of people want to know a little bit more about this island. It's a coral island, Griff. By the way, it was destroyed quite a bit during the Iran-Iraq war way back then. And then it's been rebuilt into what is considered the crown jewel for Iran in terms of its oil and its significance.
Oh, and that is indeed an understatement. Here, let's go over the wall. Let's take a look at this. Because Kharg Island, last year in 2025, 96% of crude Iranian oil went through this island. The island is less than half the size of Manhattan, but produces more than 90% of Iran's total exports. Again, 96% in 2025, according to oil experts, approximately 950 million barrels of oil a day. That accounts for about 20% of the world's oil market. That is why it's so significant economically on a global perspective. Iran's oil industry worth $50 billion. So here's where it is. It's this island right here. And all of the oil infrastructure obviously goes there, but then it's got to go through that Strait of Hormuz. And that's why President Trump said, that he has, in his words, totally obliterated any military defenses because he essentially has taken Iran's oil industry hostage. The negotiation is over safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil goes. Right now, Iran is trying to block that. The current leader, Khamenei Jr., is saying that he is going to impede it. Well, President Trump says, if you don't open up for safe passage for oil, and by the way, fertilizer also goes through this strait, that's a major component of this, then he is going to consider taking out Iran's oil infrastructure. And if he did that, that would absolutely upend Iran's ability to have an economy, because remember, Iran is a one commodity economy, and that's oil. They can't produce weapons, and whoever is going to take over after, obviously, the Iranian regime, should it fall, they're going to be dependent on that. That's why President Trump's being so careful about not taking it out. But he's saying that that shipping lane has to reopen. Otherwise, he may reconsider.
And you raise such an important point. They are a one commodity country, but it's the most important commodity in terms of everything else. And it's important to mention fertilizer because, of course, the world, fertilizer feeds the world. And much like diesel fuel, 80% of any farmer's costs is all diesel fuel. And the reason that Iran has managed to get away with being as bellicose as they have been for 50 years is because they can control that chokehold right there.
So obviously, oil markets are going to be reacting to this, and we're going to be speaking to Lee Zeldin and other oil experts, other experts in energy coming up in the show, because this is obviously an important topic, both in terms of, as you said, it makes the world go round, but there's a lot of political implications to what happens to oil as well.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.